You never know who's watching, until it's too late. Every shadow could be following you, closer than you think. Some stories don't start with screams, they start with a feeling. That quiet moment when you sense someone is behind you, but when you turn around, no one is there. In this video, these aren't made-up tales. These are real cases, real people, and real fear that followed them, closer than they ever imagined. If you're drawn to real stories that stay with you long after the video ends, make sure to subscribe and join me for the next one. 1 Cheryl Araujo Case, Massachusetts, 1983. I still remember the first time I read about Cheryl. It didn't feel like an old news case from 1983. It felt close, uncomfortable, almost like I was standing there that night. It was March 6, 1983, in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Cheryl Araujo was a 21-year-old mother of 2. That night, she went to a local bar called Big Dan's Tavern. She wasn't looking for trouble. She just wanted a drink, a small break from life. But inside that bar, something changed. Witness reports later said that some of the men inside were watching her. Not casually. Not normally. Watching her in a way that made her stand out. You know that feeling when someone's eyes stay on you a little too long? Multiply that by 10. As the night went on, the atmosphere became darker. Cheryl was separated from safety. And then, in a back room of the bar, she was attacked by several men while other people were present. Some even watched. Some laughed. Some did nothing. That part is the most disturbing. Because it wasn't a haunted house. It wasn't a ghost story. It was real people. Real silence. Real fear. Court records later confirmed the assault happened in that bar. The trial became national news. The men were convicted. But what followed may have been even more terrifying than that night. Cheryl decided to testify. She stood in court and described everything. The stares. The feeling of being surrounded. The helplessness. But instead of only focusing on the attackers, the media began focusing on her. Her choices. Her character. Her past. It felt like she was being followed again, not physically this time, but by judgment, by headlines, by strangers who had opinions about her pain. The pressure became unbearable. In 1986, just 3 years later, Cheryl died in a car accident at the age of 25. Official reports state it was an accident involving a truck. But many believe the emotional weight she carried never truly left her. What haunts me most about this case isn't something supernatural. It's the thought of being in a room full of people. And still being completely alone. When I think about that bar, I don't imagine shadows or spirits. I imagine eyes. Watching. Waiting. And I ask myself one question that still feels heavy. If I had been there that night, would I have done anything? Or would I have just watched too? 2 Carrie Swenson, Montana, 1984. I've always felt that the woods can be peaceful, but also watching you at the same time. July 1984. The mountains near Big Sky, Montana. Endless trees. Quiet air. The kind of silence that feels pure. Carrie Swenson, a former Olympic biathlete, was training alone in those mountains. She was strong. Skilled. Used to isolation. But that day, the silence wasn't empty. 2 men had been living off the grid in those woods, Don Nichols and his son Dan. They believed in strange survivalist ideas. They avoided society. And for days, they had reportedly been watching hikers from a distance. When I read the investigation details, one thing stayed with me: Carrie didn't realize she was being tracked. Imagine moving through the forest, focused on your breathing, your steps, the rhythm of your training, while someone else is matching your movements from behind the trees. She later described sensing something was wrong. Not a sound exactly. Just a shift. That instinct humans get when the air feels heavier. Then they stepped out. Armed. Calm. Too calm. They told her she would come with them. That she would marry Dan. Just like that. In the middle of nowhere. No witnesses. No help. When she refused, the situation exploded. She tried to escape. She was shot in the chest. The bullet tore through her lung. The forest that once felt peaceful suddenly felt like a trap closing in. I keep picturing that moment, lying on the ground, struggling to breathe, staring up at the trees that only seconds earlier looked beautiful. But here's where the story shifts. Two hikers nearby heard the gunshot. They rushed toward the sound. A confrontation happened. One of the kidnappers was killed. The other was later captured after a massive manhunt. Carrie survived. And that part feels almost unreal. Because the scariest detail isn't the gunshot. It's the days before it. The fact that two strangers had been watching from the woods. Studying. Waiting. When I imagine standing in those mountains now, I don't just see trees. I see space where someone could hide. And the wind moving through branches doesn't sound peaceful anymore. It sounds like footsteps you can't see. This wasn't a ghost story. It was real isolation. Real obsession. Real danger. And sometimes I think the most haunted places aren't houses or hotels. They're the quiet places, where someone can follow you for days. And you would never know. 3. Rebecca Schaeffer case. I used to think stalking was something you only see in movies. Dramatic music. Dark streets. Obvious danger. But Rebecca's story changed that for me. Rebecca Schaeffer was 21 years old. A young actress. She starred in the TV show My Sister Sam. She was building her life in Los Angeles. From the outside, everything looked bright and hopeful. But somewhere, miles away, someone was watching her. His name was Robert John Bardo. Court records later showed he had been obsessed with her for years. He wrote letters. He showed up at studio gates. Security turned him away. Most people would stop there. He didn't. What chills me is how normal everything seemed before it happened. He managed to get her home address through a private investigator. Back then, it was easier. No strict privacy laws. No strong anti-stalking protections. Imagine that. You're living your life. Going to auditions. Meeting friends. Smiling for cameras. And somewhere, a stranger knows where you sleep. On July 18, 1989, he went to her apartment building in West Hollywood. He knocked on her door. She answered. That detail always hits me the hardest. She answered because why wouldn't she? It was daytime. Around 11 a.m. A normal hour. A normal knock. He showed her a letter she had once sent him, a simple fan response. She spoke to him briefly and asked him to leave. He left. For about an hour. Then he came back. And this time, when she opened the door, he shot her in the chest at point-blank range. Right outside her own home. When I think about it, I imagine standing in that hallway. Quiet apartment building. Sunlight coming through the windows. Nothing supernatural. Nothing dramatic. Just one knock. One decision to open a door. And everything changes. He later said he felt rejected after seeing her in a movie scene. As if she owed him something. As if watching her from a distance gave him ownership. That's the part that feels almost haunted. Not by ghosts. But by obsession. After her death, California passed the first anti-stalking law in the United States. Her case changed legal history. But when I picture that morning, I don't think about laws. I think about how close danger can stand to your front door. How it can study your life quietly. How it can knock politely. And how sometimes the scariest sound in the world is not a scream. It's a knock you never expected. For Kelsey Smith case. I remember watching the surveillance footage for the first time. It didn't look dramatic. It looked ordinary. And maybe that's what made it so disturbing. It was June 2, 2007, in Overland Park, Kansas. A normal summer evening. Kelsey Smith was 18 years old. She had just graduated from high school. She went to a local Target store to buy a gift for her boyfriend. You can see her on camera walking through the parking lot. Relaxed. Holding her purse. Nothing unusual. But then, in the same frame, there's a man. He isn't running. He isn't hiding his face. He's just walking. Calm. Almost casual. But investigators later confirmed something chilling. He had been circling the parking lot in his truck, watching women. When I slow that footage down in my mind, I can almost feel the shift in the air. That tiny moment when someone realizes they are not alone. She got into her car. He moved closer. Within seconds, he forced his way inside her vehicle. The entire abduction happened in broad daylight. That part still doesn't feel real. People were nearby. Cars were parked all around. But no one noticed what was happening inside that one vehicle. Her family quickly reported her missing. Police began searching. But what makes this case different, what gives it that almost haunting edge, is the role of her cell phone. Investigators urgently requested her phone's GPS data from her mobile provider. At first, there were delays due to privacy rules. Hours passed. And in cases like this, hours feel like a lifetime. Eventually, they received the signal location. It led them to a wooded area near Grandview, Missouri. That's where they found her body 4 days later. The man who followed her that day, Edwin Hall, was arrested and later sentenced to life in prison. When I think about Kelsey's case, I don't picture a dark alley. I picture a bright parking lot. Open sky. Normal life happening all around. And one person watching from a driver's seat. The scariest part isn't just the crime. It's how invisible the threat looked. If you watched the footage without knowing the ending, you wouldn't notice anything wrong. Just a man walking. Just a girl heading to her car. But sometimes danger doesn't look dangerous. Sometimes it looks patient. And sometimes, the person following you is already closer than you think. 5 Shauna Grice case, UK. Some stories don't start with a scream. They start with someone saying, "I'm scared." Shauna Grice was 19 years old in 2016. She lived in Brighton, England. She had recently ended a relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Michael Lane. At first, it seemed like a normal breakup. But then the messages started. Texts. Calls. Showing up unannounced. Court records later showed she reported him to police multiple times. She told officers he was following her. Waiting outside her house. Appearing where she worked. I try to imagine what that feels like. Walking home and seeing a car you recognize parked down the street. Telling yourself maybe it's just coincidence. Then seeing it again the next day. And the next. Shauna wasn't silent about it. She went to the police 5 different times. In one report, she said he was hiding in bushes near her home. That detail stays with me. Bushes. Someone standing there in the dark. Watching the windows. Watching the lights turn off. Police issued warnings. At one point, they even fined Shauna for wasting police time, believing she exaggerated parts of the situation. That part feels heavier than anything else. Because she wasn't imagining it. On August 25, 2016, Michael Lane broke into her home while she was inside. He was wearing a mask. He stabbed her multiple times. Her family was in the house. By the time emergency services arrived, it was too late. He later admitted to murder and received a life sentence. When I read the investigation files, one sentence keeps echoing in my mind: she had told people she was afraid he would kill her. And he did. There's something deeply haunting about this case. Not in a supernatural way, but in the way fear can linger in hallways before anything happens. In the way someone can stand outside your home at night and you can't prove it. In the way warnings can be ignored. When I picture her story, I don't imagine ghosts. I imagine curtains slightly moving. A phone lighting up with another message. Footsteps outside that stop when you listen closely. This wasn't a mystery. She said she was being followed. She said she felt unsafe. The scariest part is not that no one knew. It's that she told them. And still, he was already outside.